Um, yeah, I like how you mentioned Ulysses' intensive calming feeling. That's probably like how I live my life. Um, so I think what Ulysses and Doug were talking about, the power of exposing yourself to multiple different perspectives and how that can kind of like water on film, right? Slowly, make you realize where your blind spots are and help you get closer to an understanding of reality. I think this is very core also to like our thought process at Testance Will. One of the core things that we're trying to do is create a place where people who see the world differently can have a place where they, in a respectful, coherent, thoughtful way, share that. Oh, I gotta do it. This is not.
It does work, so
Okay.
it's recording, but it's not amplified because that replays.
But you have to pretend.
The rear amplification? No, not you. It's terrible. Um, so that is also very core to what we're trying to do, and our hope is that people who read our publication over time, if we do our job as the editorial team, to find these writers who can thoughtfully put forward a certain perspective on different issues, certain worldview, that'll be an enriching experience for everybody who sort of crosses our path. So I think there's a lot of synergy, as you said, on that front and many others. So we're looking forward to more collaboration in the future. Thank you for hosting today. Um, I'm gonna give a quick presentation. Kind of the morning activities we have is starting to get the brain cells firing. So it's kind of an intellectual discussion workshop session. I hope you guys had your coffee. We're gonna do the in New York City excursion, kind of hanging out in the city kind of thing after lunch. But the morning is where we are gonna turf put our thinking caps on. So I hope you guys are ready and excited. I'm gonna go through a few slides on sharing kind of what I think is a very interesting subject, something that is probably eternal. It's about how human beings relate to technology, right? And I think throughout history, we're going to see that maybe there are like two fundamentally different kind of orientations that people have towards technology. They keep taking different shapes in different generations as things change. And I think today, the world we're living in, there's a really interesting sort of battle, really interesting sort of conflict going on in how we should be relating to the constant growth and expansion of the cars of technology and how we should be handling that as a society. So I wanted to sort of walk through what those two perspectives are and try to steelman them as best I can. And then that'll form the basis of the conversations we'll have after this. Interesting? Yes. Okay. Cool. I just want to make sure. Otherwise, we do different performers. What happens if this, Yeah, then I would do my open mic night. No?
Sets up curveball.
Yeah, it's intensive planning with Chewy. All right. So this is a quick kind of high level thing. First of all, life is full of problems, right? Can we all agree? Okay. Life is full of problems. No matter how much we keep solving problems, new problems keep rising out. And so this has always been the situation. And as human beings, as we solved local problems, in order to solve them, we had to expand our power. We had to expand how much influence we could have over our environment. And as we did that, what we found is our problems also kept expanding. So we would solve our local problems. In order to do that, we'd have to expand our abilities, our ability to influence the environment. And as we did that, our problems kept expanding in scope too. So there's this weird sort of a recursive process that has been going on for thousands of years. And now when we think about it, the concerns that the average person has, sitting at home on Twitter or whatever, is they're like global in scope. Sitting in our homes wherever we are, the problems we're actually concerned about at a serious level are like can take on global proportions. And so problems don't seem to go away. As we solve them, new ones keep coming out. And in order to solve them, we rely on something called technology, right? So it's our ability to make tools that have contributed to our ability to solve problems. Okay, our ability to use technology. And so just quickly before I jump into the two perspectives, I would say there is an intimate relationship, there's an intimate connection between how we relate to technology, how we approach solving problems, and the kinds of problems we have to solve. Is that fair? I don't want to go into it too much, but this is just sort of to lay the ground. Yeah. So now we're going to go into perspective one. Again, this is a perspective that people take, a very deep-rooted perspective that people take with respect to how we should relate to, the expansion of technology and its capabilities. I haven't named it yet because it's tough to find a name, but we're going to watch this video real quick.
Wasser ist das Blut der Erde. Wasser gehört zum Grund und Boden. Wenn der Wasserhaushalt in Ordnung ist, dann hast du Wachstum. Dann hast du 70%, wie ich schon gesagt habe, der Arbeit getan. Aber wir haben genug Wasser auf der ganzen Welt. Nur wir haben es verlernt, mit dem Wasser zu haushalten und das Wasser zu nutzen. Aber auch das Wasser zu schützen. Bei mir ist es ganz gleich, wann ich aufstehe. Bei Mondlicht, bei der Nacht, am Morgen oder wo immer, rausgehen. Raus in die Natur, einen Blick vor das Fenster. Es ist jeden Tag was Neues zu sehen. Das ist einfach alles ein erweitertes Wohnzimmer. Weil Bauer sein der schönste Beruf überhaupt auf der ganzen Welt ist. Es gibt keinen schönen Beruf wie Bauer sein. Diese Vielfalt, das in deinem Verantwortungsbereich, wie alles blüht und wächst und gedeiht und Früchte trägt und sich wohlfühlt. Und du bist in der Mitte drin, wo sich alles wohlfühlt. Dass sich in einer Symbiose alles wohlfühlt, ist ja selbstverständlich. Also das müsste eigentlich jeder natürlich denkende Mensch begreifen. Meine Vision für die Welt ist, dass die Menschen alle mehr nachdenken. Dass sie versuchen, Natur zu begreifen, Natur zu verstehen. Dass sie in der Universität Natur sich beschäftigen und lernen. Die Natur hat für alle Fragen eine Antwort. Du musst mit ihr kommunizieren. Mit deiner Erde, mit deinem Wasser, mit deiner Umgebung, mit deinen Mitlebewesen. Und
Okay. So we can kind of get the gist of where he's coming from, right there. This Sepp Bolzer, I would say, is if we're going to follow the first perspective, Techno-Religion 1. He's like one of the heroes of that perspective. You know, this extremely intelligent person living very close to nature, trying to understand and connect his. It's not that he's not thinking, letting nature do whatever it wants and just trying to hang out. He was like deeply invested in trying to understand how does nature operate, what are the different links, and how does the system actually work. And he's not just violating it with a bunch of concrete and structure and trying to like build a bunch of stuff into it, but he'll build some things very carefully in a way that puts him into a kind of harmony with the environment. Do you guys sort of understand where I'm coming from? Do you get that sense? This is sort of you could say he's like an archetype or like a hero of one of these perspectives, the way he's living. And you can see how passionate he is, right? About this way of living. So what are the basic arguments? Like if I were to construct the worldview of this particular approach to what we do with technology, how we use technology, I would say the basic building blocks or some of the basic ways that this person would look at the world is nature functions in cycles, right? There's many different kinds of cycles: water, carbon, nitrogen, life and death, day and night, etc. And these cycles are maintained by a very delicate balance, very delicate interplay. We have somebody here who works in forests, and is very, perhaps they can attest to that, right? Like there's very delicate interplay between how all these things work, and that's what keeps the system going. And when everyone plays their role within the system, it can sustain and support life forever. Okay, you guys with me? So all we have to do is play our role. Don't violate it. Don't try to break the system. Don't try to break the equilibrium. We all play our role. And if we do that, we can all live well together forever. Like, what's the problem? Why wouldn't we do that? And we can push the limits of the system, but if we break these limits, we disrupt the whole system in a way that hurts us all eventually. Okay? If we try to break these limits, this intricate symbiosis with life, what we'll do is we'll end up just disrupting it in a way that eventually will hurt all of us, right? So there's this great documentary on Netflix that I saw many years ago called The Progress Trap, and they were exactly exploring this. And he would talk about how thousands of years ago, there was a symbiosis between the humans and the woolly mammoth in a certain, it was very hard to kill a woolly mammoth. So maybe some humans would die in the process or whatever. But when you killed it, you got meat that would sustain your village for a long time, right? But then humans figured out the technology of how to hunt in a pack and use all kinds of strategy and tactics to like herd woolly mammoth off of cliffs. And so they would all just fall to their death and you wouldn't have to risk your life. You would just scare them and they would stand. And so once we figured out that technology, we were feasting for a while. And then what happened is all the woolly mammoths died off. There wasn't enough time for them to reproduce. And now you have a kind of famine or your society struggling again because you broke the system. You broke the equilibrium with your technology. And now what are you going to do? So now you have to find some new things. So maybe you invade some other territory because you need resources and food. And this process just keeps going. It's like, have any of you guys seen The Matrix? One of my favorites, right? Remember in when Agent Smith is like his whole thing about how like humans are a virus on this planet and this kind of thing. It's like when you break the equilibrium of the system, you have to keep dominating and conquering new sources of energy and sustenance, and that turns you into a kind of virus type of behavior. And why would we do this? Why would we disrupt something that's so harmonious? That would be the worldview, and this is why I call them religions, because of the way I'm framing it. They have a worldview, and in that worldview, they recommend what is the purpose of human life, like how should a human be living. And from this perspective, they would say, I would argue, fulfillment doesn't come from endlessly feeding your appetites. The path is futile, destructive, and unending. Instead, fulfillment arises from understanding our place in the larger system, humbling ourselves before its equilibrium and its limits, and aligning with its harmony. Okay, so that means this is where we should apply all of our energy, intelligence, and willpower, like Sept. He devoted all of his energy, intelligence, and willpower to figuring out how do I come into more harmony and alignment with the system, right? And technological innovation is valuable, but only in service of sustaining this harmony, not breaking it. Does that make sense? How much time do we have? Mary's gonna tackle me if I
10 minutes.
She warned yesterday. Okay,
10 minutes.
so I'll skip this. I'll skip this link, but this is another guy, Nate Higgins. Okay, he has he wrote a brilliant like thesis on what he calls energy blindness. Okay, and if I were to go into this, maybe if we have time at the end, we can watch it. But he effectively is arguing how we're blind actually in society today to how much energy we're using, and we're actually going to hit a limit, and we're going to run out, and society is going to degrade. He calls this the great simplification. He's like, we're actually running towards that. Because our appetite for energy, we don't realize how much of it we're taking, and we're not going to have enough to sustain this kind of living forever. And we're going to go through what he calls a great simplification. Anyway, we don't have time for that. So, but that's kind of this.
Tell me about energy bond.
Okay. That great simplification idea you can say is coming from this worldview. It's like we totally are disrupting our equilibrium, and we're going to pay for it. Yeah. And now we go to perspective 2. So a little bit of getting perspective 2's vibes. So, E acceleration. We will talk about that. Has many of you guys heard that term before? Raise your hand if you heard E acceleration. I mean, we got a couple. Okay, we'll look at that. Effective acceleration. E-ash. So they call it, or yeah. It's as a contrast to effective altruism. But okay, so you guys can kind of get it's a different vibe, right? Totally different vibe. Okay, so what are the basic arguments of this perspective, this techno-religion? Okay, they would probably argue it is our ability to build technology that has allowed us to transcend the terrible conditions of raw nature. Okay, living today, can you guys even imagine what life was like 200 years ago? Like what you would have to do to get by day to day? You know, forget about 2000, forget about 20,000 years ago. Okay, we all have this idyllic view of like the forest, and we're gonna like go around and like frolic, but actually like you get killed by like a cobra or something. Like nature was raw. Okay, and it is our ability to build technology that has allowed us to actually transcend the harsh limits that nature was imposing on us. And that is a great thing. We shouldn't be ashamed of that. Human intelligence is capable of penetrating into the secrets of nature. We can use this knowledge to intelligently manipulate nature to push past the limits that nature imposes on us. Okay. That would be this worldview. And since we can do that, that becomes the purpose of our life. That's what we should be doing. The purpose of human intelligence is to become the masters of nature. Okay, master everything. With mastery, we can solve all of our problems, and we can transcend many of the limits that seem insurmountable today. We can become a spacefaring civilization, live for centuries. The average person, why can't they live for 1,000 years? Build AGI, artificial general intelligence, cure all disease, and do more amazing things. This way, we can alleviate so much suffering and come closer to nature. We can actually come closer to nature, perhaps even become godlike ourselves. Okay. And since this is possible for us, we should devote all of our intelligence, energy, and willpower to this possibility. Tech innovation is valuable because it allows us to break free of limits. And to not do this is to perpetuate a ton of unneeded suffering and keep us from our potential. It's not that we're against being in harmony with nature. The most thoughtful people who come from this perspective would say, no, if you say we're against coming into harmony with nature, you're strawmanning us. We believe to come into harmony with nature, we should increase our lived experience of nature. Right now, to figure out what's going on the other side of the universe, we're guessing. We just have a bunch of guesses and theories. Why don't we build a rocket ship, go there and look at it for ourselves? That's how you come into harmony with nature, because we bring more of reality into our lived experience. So it is through expanding our powers, expanding our technology, expanding our mastery over nature, that we can actually come into harmony with nature and reduce all of human suffering. Does that make sense? And how much time do I have?
Like 3 more minutes.
Okay. We can. You guys can check this guy. He's been a popularizer on the internet of this effective accelerationism kind of school of thought. He goes by the name Beth Jesus. So you. We won't watch that video. But in the beginning of this video, he walks through like, what are my criteria? He's like, we should have unlimited abundant energy. Like, what are the bare minimum of effective accelerationism succeeded? It's like, we should have abundant energy, probably through nuclear. We should become a space-faring civilization, and we should do a double. Like things that even imagining one of those things would like blow our mind. Because like fast 4 or 5 of them, that's the baseline thing, and like that kind of thing is what he's saying. So do we get a sense? Can you get a sense of how these are two different vibes? Yeah, two totally different perspectives on how we should be approaching technology. Okay. So now putting them together real quick in the last. So we were discussing this as we were preparing. We're like, how do we? What is the crux of the debate here? And we want to explain it in a way where we don't like unfairly strawman one side with the other. Like we want to, because what's the point of that? Then the most powerful proponent of the other side will just knock you down when they're like, oh, you're strawmanning us, right? So how do we really, like, what is the real crux of it? And kind of where we landed on was this idea of like, you have a different relationship with the fundamental limits is kind of how we're thinking about it. So the left side, you would say, is that first one, okay? Perspective one. And they would be, it's like natural limits are real. They're actually there. They're not an imagined, they're not a wizard, okay? And if we tamper with them at our own peril, we should humble ourselves, seek to understand these limits so that we can live in harmony with nature without destroying her. If we break a limit and survive, okay? Somebody will say, yeah, we kill all the mammoths, but we're still here as limitless. What's the problem? It's like, yeah, it's because you keep shipping, you export the problem and the toxicity of your actions into an externality. Somebody else is bearing the cost. It's like, it's because we have species extinction on the whole planet. That's why there's 8 billion humans or something like that is what they would say, So if we break a limit and survive, it's only because we exported the externality somewhere else. And ultimately, if we keep doing this, it's going to terminate all of this, okay? The other side will say, has a different understanding of what we should do with limits. They're like, there may be fundamental limits somewhere. Maybe you're right. maybe somewhere at the core of the world universe, there's fundamental limits. But a lot of the limits we perceive are illusory and malleable. You know, there are limits that people probably thought before, like a human being can only live to 50 years. Like there's no way you can, how we've broken past that limit, right? A lot of these limits may be illusory or malleable. By better understanding nature, we can manipulate those limits and master nature. And if we don't try this again, we're unnecessarily perpetuating suffering. So it's a different relationship to fundamental limits in nature. Does that make sense? That might be the crux of these two worldviews, where you can kind of... And now the problem is, how does each side perceive the other? Each side thinks the people on the other side are, one, stupid and dangerous. Okay? It's like, if you're on one side, you think these other guys are going to kill us because if they keep going. And if you're on the other side, you're like, these guys are going to kill us if we let them keep have power. Okay? And so it's like, first of all, their project is unsustainable. It's not going to work. And if we empower them, it's going to harm all of us. Do you guys can you sense that? I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. So each side perceives the other, the strongest proponents, as futile and dangerous. Okay. So that animates a lot of energy and activism from both sides. And so, like I said, this is a debate that's been going on. You guys have probably heard like the Luddites. I would argue at the founding of the U.S., the debate between Jefferson and Hamilton, between what should the United States be, was actually a version of this. Like Jefferson had one view, Hamilton had another. You could argue Hamilton's view won out, and when the U.S. went in one direction. Right? But you could argue they were both coming from this. This was an aspect of their different perspectives on what the U.S. should be fundamentally. Okay. In our contemporary world, I think we're going through an interesting shift, like an interesting vibe shift, I would say, on this debate. So this is my subjective perspective. You can argue with me on this if you want, but I would say for the first half of the 20th century in America and the Western world, we were totally on that second perspective path. It's like, oh, we figured out this technology, industrial world, we're just gonna like conquer everything, and we're gonna like create amazing quality of life for everyone, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe around the nuclear weapons, people started like getting a little like, well, where are we going with this? You know. But still, we sent a rocket to space, all this kind of stuff. There was very much this feeling of like, we can actually master a lot of things that we can think much. Then maybe sometime around the 70s or 80s, that vibe shifted a little bit, where you could say the limit respecting side started getting more prominent. It's like, wait, are we disrupting our environment? Are we damaging things? Maybe we should slow down, this kind of thought process. I would argue in the vibe in the 2010s, at least among like the decision makers in the world, was very much on the limit respecting side. It's like, oh, it's all about renewable energy. We have to coordinate for global climate change. You know, all the Silicon Valley people were like, yeah, we have to invest in solar, all this kind of stuff. Then around the Ukraine invasion, there was a rumblings of a vibe shift. You could start to see some prominent influencers were like, wait a second. Germany and different countries in Europe, maybe you guys will remember, Germany and different countries in Europe shut down their nuclear power plants, shut down their coal plants, okay? They wanted to push them to solar and renewable and all this kind of stuff. But they were an industrial economy. So now to sustain themselves, they become dependent on Russian fossil fuel. So now when Russia attacks Ukraine, Russia has Germany by the throat. Germany can't do anything aggressive, right? Because then Russia will turn off their gas. So it's like, was that a right thing? Was it right to shut off the coal plants? Was it right to shut off the nuclear power plants? Like, are we unfairly limiting ourselves for no reason, and it's only going to cause a problem? You know? And then with the AI thing recently, this kind of thing blew up. And I would say there's like a very powerful ideological movement coming from Silicon Valley and other places called effective accelerationism. With AI, the fear is like, oh, AGI is an existential threat or it's a panacea. Either it's going to cause havoc or it's going to solve like cancer. You know, it's going to solve a ton of women's lymphomas, right? So depending on which side where you think it's going, one side is that we have to regulate the shit out of it. We have to like harshly regulate this thing. And the other side is don't regulate it at all. Let it flourish, you know? And there's a powerful push from the let it flourish side. The effective accelerationists would become this side. I call this the limit challenging mindset. And it's becoming more organized. And their meme game is strong. Usually always the reactionary one is has the stronger meme game because they have to like fight for space. So they come up with, they're all coming, but I think the limit respecting side is catching up. They're coming up with cool, fun meme names for each other. So the limit challenging side will call the limit respecting side decel, doomer. Have you guys heard these terms? Who has heard these terms before? Decel, doomer, yeah. So that's like a pejorative, right? The limit respecting side will call the other side, well, you guys are decel, you guys are doomers, you guys, you know, aren't bad. I would say the limit respecting side meme game is catching up. The oligarch is one that's coming up now. I think that's a good one. That's a strong one. I think that has legs. They're gonna toss that at the other side. And so there's a battle here because it's like the technology we're playing around with right now. I mean, who the hell knows where it's going to take us? And so there's very powerful ideas and this eternal yin and yang debate between should we be a limit respecting species or a limit challenging species is taking on a slightly new incarnation. And it's all happening on Twitter. So if you want to ruin your life, you can go there. But it's very interesting. It's very fun. And so that was my framework. Mary's going to tackle me like fast as I can see it. But so I'm gonna finish. I'm gonna interesting. Okay, it sets the framework for some of the workshops we're gonna do after this. So hopefully that was interesting. Thank you.